In considering whether atheism is a worldview, it seems that we must first consider what a worldview is in the first place. And there seems to be some confusion on this point, because generally it seems that people think that a worldview is your view of the world, of course, and so it refers to everything you believe. So everything you believe, that's your worldview. And that's, well, maybe it's a secondary level understanding of what a worldview is, because primarily, let me put it this way, for instance, we're not omniscient. So tomorrow, a new kind of animal or a new star or a new who knows what could be discovered, and that would then be fitted into your worldview. And how would it get fitted? Well, it would get fitted into it by you considering this new data as per the lenses through which you see, and those lenses are your worldview. So in other words, there's a core, and that core informs you as to how to think about whatever it may be. Ethics, epistemology, cosmogony, whatever it may be, you view it through your core, and that core is what your worldview is. So through the core you interpret everything else, and then once that is all systematized, then that's maybe the second level understanding of what a worldview is. So now, especially in recent years, due to the fact that in modern times, say the late 1800s, atheism was understood as a positive affirmation of God's existence, so that atheists were saying that they knew that God did not exist. Of course, they were asked for evidence and they couldn't provide any. So there's been a steady stream of taking a fallback position of claiming that, well, one thing all atheists have in common is that they lack a belief in God. So let's grant them that for our purposes and say, okay, atheism is only a lack of belief in God, and that's it. So it's not a worldview. It's just one statement about one issue. Okay, so since it's one statement about one issue, and that is the issue of God's existence, then does that mean that when, for example, atheists think about how life came to be in the first place, they would assert that God created life? Well, no. And just, I think instantly you'll see, well, atheism is a worldview, because the core is a lack of belief in God. And since the atheist lacks a belief in God, they will not allow God to show up anywhere. So no matter what they think of, epistemology, ethics, cosmogony, it doesn't matter what it is, they will always inevitably, purposefully keep God out of it, so that their lack of belief in God informs everything about which they think. So that becomes the lens through which they interpret all things, and that is the core of their worldview. So then I guess secondly, the issue is whether atheism is as in one worldview, or many worldviews, such as one per atheist. Well, going back to what we just reviewed, then atheism is one worldview, the worldview according to which the individual lacks a belief in God. But then, well, what about the maybe second level understanding of a worldview? So that what does an atheist think about ethics, epistemology, cosmogony, etc.? Well, in the specifics of it, atheists could certainly differ, but they would still view those various and sundry issues as per their shared worldview. So that in that sense, atheism is one worldview. Although when you get into the specifics, the nitty-gritty of the details, the minutiae, then to some degree each atheist has their own worldview. at the second tier level, right? But the first level, they all agree, and atheism is a worldview, in that they would all hold that they lack a belief in God, and therefore they will not allow God to have a part in anything that they consider. No matter what they're thinking about, no matter what they're learning in you, no matter what they're thinking about whatsoever, that is one thing that they share, is the one primary atheist core, which becomes their worldview. And again, on the secondary level, that's almost a different issue. But even at the secondary level, in which they consider various things, they will still share the view that regardless of what they think about, they will keep God out of it. They will specifically not include God in any of it. So in that sense, and in various senses, atheism is a worldview. Another thing to consider when thinking about atheism as a worldview is that atheism is thought restricting, right? Because the consistent atheist wants to keep their thoughts consistent with atheism, their views consistent with atheism, their opinion of various things, their interpretations consistent with atheism. And so that they must restrict their thoughts to a lack of belief in God, so that they are not allowed, or they are not allowing themselves to follow the evidence where it leads. Rather, they would restrict their interpretation of the evidence to force fit within their worldview. Because atheism cannot allow a divine foot in the doors of perception. So that in this way, atheism is not truly free thinking, because it's restricting to their thinking. And this is why you get into so many issues of evidence being interpreted, and the atheist must interpret any and all evidence in accordance to their restrictive worldview. Whereas being a theist myself, for example, I can follow the evidence where it leads. So let's say, let me be reductive ad absurdum here, I'll just say something preposterous. Let's say I believe that a certain phenomena was caused by God sprinkling fairy dust. But then through scientific research, we learned that there's a natural process, hence before unknown, and now we can explain the phenomena through natural processes. Well, then I can say, well, that's wonderful. That's a natural process. I thought God did it, and now I realize that when it comes to the specifics of the mechanism, that this is not necessarily done by God in each and every instance. Now you get to bigger issues such as whether the whole phenomena or the whole creation was put in place by God, but that's not the secondary thing. I'm just focusing in on just a really preposterous example. Well, again, the atheist must restrict their thinking if they want to be a consistent thinker, if they want to be consistent with atheism. And that's one of the true tragedies of atheism, is it's like putting your head or your brain within a neat little box of materialism and naturalism, and so that you cannot view things except through that restrictive template, right? That core belief of lacking belief in God. You must hold to that at any and all costs.